Tally ho, ItsOcean back again with the second part of my video game tier list. Now, as I previously said in the outro for the first part of this was supposed to be one whole video, but then I realised that it would be like a 2-hour long video, so I decided to split it up into chunks, and this is part 2. So you will see my clothing change, because this is Future Ocean reporting on this live from NBC News. What the fuck am I talking about? I did 25 games last episode, and we're going to be doing 25 more this episode, so let's switch on over to Past Ocean. Now, the next game is also going to be a game that's going to be kind of difficult to rank, because I really enjoyed this game, but in a similar fashion to Red Dead Redemption 2, I had issues with the controls. That game is Far Cry 5. Now, for Far Cry 5, it's not so much of a case of frustration. I've just never really liked the shooting mechanics of Far Cry 5, at least not for console. I always felt that console Far Cry 5 something feels off about the gunplay. I think it is because there is a slight delay on the gunplay, and I don't like how it feels, but I did really enjoy this game, so I'm going to be putting it in pretty darn good. Now, the next one is another visual novel, and it's a really random one, but good God, oh, is it so good! And that game, of course, is Dream Daddy. Oh god, those dads are so dreamy. And I'm going to put this game in pretty darn good. Once again, it was a fantastic game. I had a really good time with it. And yeah, I just thought it was a really cool game. The next one is going to be a little bit weird, because this game for me feels like a product of its time. And that game is BioShock. I love BioShock 1. I liked BioShock 2 and I liked BioShock Infinite as well. But none of these games have ever been anything past pretty darn good. Therefore, BioShock 1 is getting put in pretty darn good. Mostly because the game now feels kinda dated. I recently tried to go back and play it, and I found myself struggling to get invested in what was going on again. That might have been just because I've already played it before, but I don't know. I am going to give it another shot at some point though, so we'll see. Maybe in the future I'll do a tier list where a bunch of these other games might change their position. We'll see. This franchise is a looter shooter that's got some very wacky and zany characters and humour, and that game franchise is Borderlands. And I'm going to start off with Borderlands 1, which is actually further in the list. I don't know why, but I started with Borderlands 3, and then pre-sequel, somewhere along that line, I think Borderlands 2 is in there somewhere, and then I've got Borderlands 1. I don't know why I did it that way, but apparently I'm a dumbass. So I'm going to put Borderlands 1 up there, and I'm going to say it's pretty darn good. I do think it's a fantastic game. It's got some really cool shooting mechanics, it's got really cool class mechanics, but this being the start of the franchise, it does have some things that I do wish it would have improved on that later was improved on. One of those things being the location of Pandora is kind of boring most of the time. It's basically just deserts, 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 and deserts, and there's also a desert in there, and I also, oh, I'm an idiot, I just realised, I forgot about the desert. Although there is snowy locations later on, and the DLC does have some variety, but just the base game by itself was kind of boring for its locations, and the story, what story? There was barely a story in that game. But I do really enjoy this game, therefore I'm going to leave it in pretty darn good. I'm now having to scroll to the second to last game in this list for some reason, which is the sequel, which is Borderlands 2. I'm just going to go through the whole Borderlands franchise now, because why not, I guess. Borderlands 2. It's terrible. It's an absolutely awful example of a game not being terrible. It is fantastic. I'm putting it in masterpiece. Borderlands 2 basically took everything I didn't like about Borderlands 1 and just improved on it. It had a fantastic story with fantastic characters. Handsome Jack is considered one of the best villains of all time, which is awesome. The classes are really fun to play as. It added a whole new level of endgame for the players that like that sort of thing. And yes, I just think it's a fantastic game that I still go back and play regularly. The next one is Borderlands the pre-sequel, and unfortunately, even though this game is very similar to Borderlands 2, I don't think it's as good. And I feel like some people are going to disagree with me on this, but I still really enjoyed pre-sequel, and I'm going to put it in pretty darn good. I still really enjoyed the story. I had a great time with the classes and the characters. I don't really care so much about the endgame, because I've just never really been a fan of endgame in Borderlands games. But yes, there was something about this game that wasn't quite as good as Borderlands 2, and therefore I'm putting it in pretty darn good. Well, and the final game that I'm going to be doing in the Borderlands franchise is going to be kind of a weird one, and I feel like people are going to disagree with me on this. But that game is Borderlands 3. And I am putting it in pretty darn good. I've seen there's quite a lot of people out there that really don't like this game, whether it be for the performance issues that the game has had and continues to have, which I totally understand and totally agree with, whether it be because of, without spoiling anything, the story being absolutely pretty awful, full of plot holes and just really not good. I don't like the story either. But outside of that, I really enjoyed this game. I thought the characters were really fun to play as, they were very quirky and enjoyable, and I still think it's a really fun game, but I don't think it's as good as Borderlands 2, and therefore I'm putting it in pretty darn good. Now the next game, the next game, oh my god. Oh my freaking god. This is a game that where I'm gonna be moving games further into the tier because of how goddamn much I love this game. This game is definitely not a bad time. And that game, of course, is Undertale. I love it, and I'm pushing it at the top of Masterpiece past every other game just because of how goddamn much I love this game. Undertale is one of my favourite games of all time. I will be making a video on this game at some point, but I absolutely adore it. I think it is a fantastic example of what indie games can be, and it is a fantastic example of why people should not be sleeping on indie games. I see so much discourse around indie games where people see an indie game and go, oh, it's not AAA, I hate it so much, oh my god, why is it not the next Call of Duty or like the new big AAA title, like oh my god, it's just this small indie game, look at the graphics, it's like, ooh, why is it not realistic? And to that I say, you're fucking dumb. These games are fantastic. Undertale beats so many of the AAA games that I have played in this modern age, and I freaking adore it, and I definitely recommend checking it out. So yes, it goes in Masterpiece. The next game was an indie game that was pitched to a big company who were impressed by it enough to take it on board and actually hire those members of staff, from what I remember, and it is a triumph. I'm being so sincere right now, because that game, of course, is Portal, and I'm putting it in pretty darn good, because yeah, I just think it's a really fun, really cool game. There's not much else to say about it. The puzzles are really cool, the gameplay mechanics were at the time pretty damn fantastic and felt very groundbreaking, and yeah, I just think it's a really cool game. So it goes in pretty damn good. The next one is going to be another game that I feel like people are going to disagree with me on. Some may agree, some may not. But that game is Dark Souls. And I'm putting Dark Souls in a new category, which I've not made yet, but it's the worst game of all time. I think it's such a goddamn good game, so I'm going to be putting it in pretty darn good. Now, the thing that I feel like people might disagree on is I know that the Souls fanbase has a massive love for Dark Souls, but I don't know, I just always thought it was a pretty good game. I enjoyed it, I finished it, I thought it was great, but I never saw it as anything more than that. So that might just be because I personally am not the biggest fan of roguelike games. Like you may have noticed already, I don't think there's actually been any roguelike games in this list up until now. But yes, I really enjoyed Dark Souls, but I just don't really see it as anything more than pretty darn good. So that's where I'm putting it. Now, I'm going to be going through yet another franchise, and for some reason, one of the entries in this franchise is almost at the very end of the list. I don't know why I keep doing this. And that franchise involves zombies in a mall. Well, for one of the games at least. And that franchise is Dead Rising. Now, I freaking love the Dead Rising franchise. I've made a video on Dead Rising 1 already on this channel. If you want to go and check that out, feel free to go and click it. So I'm going to be starting off with Dead Rising 1. Now, I do know that the Dead Rising fanbase does tend to love Dead Rising 1 as the best one and don't tend to like the later games. I'm a little bit similar, but I mix things up a little bit. And I'm going to be putting Dead Rising 1 in pretty darn good, because I do think it's a fantastic game, a very fun game. But the reason why I'm putting it in pretty darn good is because there are a few things that bother me about this game. There are some difficulty spikes here and there. I didn't like the fact that I felt like I needed to play through the game once just to get my bearings on the areas and to have my fun with the game before focusing on the story because of the timed aspects of the game, before going on to a second playthrough where I then actually got the story done, especially because the final boss, oh my god. I know you can cheese the final boss, but if you have to cheese the final boss, then that to me says there's an issue with the boss itself. But yeah, there were some bosses and some moments in this game that really frustrated me, and for those reasons I'm putting it in pretty darn good. Now the next one is going to be a bit of a controversial controversial. Well, in fact, I say that this whole franchise is going to be controversial because I have some opinions on this franchise. But the next game, of course, is Dead Rising 2. Now, I'm just going to be going with Dead Rising 2, the base game. I'm not doing Off the Record. I'm not doing the smaller Case Zero or Case West. Just Dead Rising 2 on its own. And I am putting this game in Masterpiece. And I know people are going to disagree with that, because a lot of people see Dead Rising 1 as better than the second one. And I'll admit, I'm maybe a little bit biased here, because I played Dead Rising 2 first. I mean, I played a little bit of Dead Rising 1 when I got a chance to, but I didn't own the game for myself, so Dead Rising 2 was my first full experience with Dead Rising, and I freaking loved the game. I do kind of prefer the story of Dead Rising 1 a little bit more, but I always thought that Frank West was just this macho, kind of ridiculous sometimes guy that's always cracking these, like, one-liners after boss fights, and I always kind of enjoyed him just a little bit more than Frank West, which once again I know is controversial. The comments in this video are going to be a goddamn mess. But yes, I love the gameplay, I love all the changes that they made from the first game, and I just thought this game was just a little bit better than Dead Rising 1, hence why I'm putting it in Masterpiece, because I love both Dead Rising 1 and 2. Now then, it's time to do it. It's time to get on with it. The next two games in the franchise, Dead Rising 3 and 4. These games are possibly the most controversial games in the entirety of the franchise. And I'm not looking forward to what people want to say about these games, because I feel like it's just going to be people getting mad at me. But I'm putting the next game, Dead Rising 3, in pretty darn good. Sure, the game world is really boring and very grey a lot of the time. The story's not as good as the past games. In fact, the whole game is just not as good as Dead Rising 1 or 2. But I still really enjoyed this game. I still had a lot of fun. I know it does strip a lot of the timed elements out of the game, or at least makes it feel like the timer might as well not matter, but I still thought this game was really fun. I still had a massive amount of fun with this game, and therefore I'm putting it in pretty damn good. And the final one, which I feel like some people may forgive me a little bit for on this, at least after what I said about Dead Rising 3, it's Dead Rising 4, of course, and I'm gonna put this in okay. I think it's just okay. I don't think it's a terrible game, the story's not very good, and they absolutely butchered Frank West in this game. I call him Hank East. In fact, he in the game disguises his own name as Hank East, and I refer to him as that. He's not Frank West, he's Hank East. But yes, I really enjoyed the Christmas kind of gimmick with this game. I thought it actually added some fun to the game, and I still think it's a really fun game to play. I just don't think it's anything special. I don't think it's anything past being okay. Therefore, it goes in okay. Also, the DLCs were kind of disappointing, so oh well. Now, the next one is a kind of spiritual follow-up to one of my games in the Masterpiece category, and that game is Deltarune. I don't think I've ever been so excited in my life for the release of something. This game came out literally out of the blue. I woke up one day, I checked Twitter, because I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna look on Twitter real quick. Saw Deltarune trending, was like, what the hell is this? It's something to do with Undertale, I know that, but what's going on? And found out that Deltarune just got dropped out of nowhere, and everyone was losing their minds over this game. I sprung out of bed, put on my dressing gown and a bit of clothing, I rushed in the living room, put my computer on and downloaded it and played it for YouTube immediately. I needed to play this game as soon as possible. I was so goddamn excited. And we don't know what the rest of the game will be just yet, and because of the fact that it wasn't quite as good as Undertale, though it was still a very, very good game, I'm going to be putting Deltarune in pretty darn good. This one tier is going to dominate the entire tier list, I swear to God. Now, the next game is one that some people may not have heard of, but it's one that I gave a try, and this game is Desert Child. I made a video on this where I talked about it. It was also in my Game of the Year nominees. But this game, for me, was almost another sleeper hit. It was a game that I thought was like, it's I was kind of bored and thought, I'll just play this game, it's probably going to be, whatever. And after I completed this game, I thought, this is absolutely fantastic. So much so that I 100%ed the game on PlayStation, and then I actually purchased it on Xbox as well, and 100%ed it on there as well. I love this game, and definitely recommend going checking it out. And therefore, even though I feel like some people may disagree with this, I'm going to put it in Masterpiece. Oh, the next game. The next game. This is going to be a weird one. So I'm going to be talking about a live service game, and I want to quickly say that for that reason, I'm going to be talking about this game, just how I feel about it right now, as it stands. and that is in the year of 2021, and that game is Destiny 2. Now, this game is very weird for me because I play this game almost every day. This is the one game that I constantly keep up with, and I constantly check out all the new DLCs, expansions, and updates, and seasons, and all that stuff. But I also fucking hate this game. I could get into it for hours, honestly. I could probably have podcast-style episodes about why I have problems with this game. The PvE can be fantastic, but also has a lot of stuff that's really grindy, monotonous, and boring to sit through. I personally find the PvP to be the worst PvP I've ever played in my life. I know people will completely disagree with that, and I will never understand why, because I just do not get the hype for the PvP in Destiny 2. I've always hated Destiny's PvP. Since the very beginning of Destiny 1, I've never enjoyed this game's PvP. I just think it's such a damn broken mess at all times. But I'm gonna put it in... I can't put it past okay, which is really weird because I play this game all the time. The gunplay is fantastic, but some of the decisions that Bungie make with this game just make me... why? Why do you do these things? Why are you doing this? And for that reason, I can't put it past okay, because it's a game that even though I play it all the time, I still can't recommend playing it, because I feel like a lot of people will be frustrated by this game at some point in their life. They will get really angry and frustrated about this game, so I'm gonna put it in okay. Tier lists are hard, man. They are so hard. And the next game is a game that I checked out last year, and I still need to make a goddamn video on this game. One day I'll actually get around to making a video. Same with Final Fantasy VII Remake. And Ghost of Tsushima. Oh my god, there's so many videos I need to make. But this game takes place in a galaxy far, far away, and that game is Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. And I'm going to put it in pretty darn good. Because I did really enjoy the story for this game. I thought it was pretty good. I mostly enjoyed the combat, but I wasn't a fan of the Souls-esque, like, roguelike elements of the game. I kind of felt like it didn't need some of those elements, such as you get the whole bonfire system of when you sit at certain areas, all the enemies respawn. I always thought that just made things a little bit irritating. I just found myself running past most of the enemies because I just wanted to get to somewhere where I was trying to get to, rather than having to fight every little insignificant enemy. It kind of became a pain in the ass after a while, but I did still really enjoy this game, and therefore it goes in pretty darn good. I will say though, after Battlefront 1 and 2, it was fantastic to jump back into a Star Wars game that was genuinely good, so I can't help but say thumbs up to that. Now, the next game is actually going to be another franchise, but I'm only going to be covering 2 games, and the comments are going to hate me again. Why am I doing this? I'm going to just have everyone with pitchforks through the entire video. And that franchise is the Fable franchise. Now, I came into the Fable franchise a little bit late, and the first game that I actually played was Fable 2, and I absolutely adore this game. I love it so goddamn much. I love the story, I love the characters, I love the game world, I love the combat, I love the customization the most, because I'm a very cosmetic person when it comes to video games, and I'm going to be putting Fable 2 in Masterpiece, which I know people are going to disagree with, but I don't care, this is my list, goddammit. But then, the next game is Fable 3. And unfortunately this game wasn't as good as Fable 2. I did like the multiplayer stuff where you can play online fully with your own characters, not with the weird mercenary system that you had in Fable 2 where you just had a buddy jump in with a random character. I wasn't really a fan of that. But Fable 3's multiplayer was fantastic. I had such a great time. I played this with friends, I played this with my partner, and I really do enjoy this game, but I don't think it's as good as Fable 2, and for that reason I'm putting it in pretty darn good. And you may notice that I'm excluding Fable 1 from this list, because I'll admit, like I said, I played Fable 2 first, and then I played Fable 3, and then for some reason, I tried Fable 1, I really did. I also realised the tier list just expanded, so I need to move my damn I need to edit things again. I really did try to like Fable 1, but it felt dated to me, and I have trouble with games, like going back to games previously, which is why a lot of the time I do try these days to play games from the very start instead of jumping in at like a latest iteration. And for that reason, I'm not putting Fable 1 in this list, because I didn't finish it, I will admit. I kind of got bored, I was just like, and thus, I'm not going to put it in this list. I know people are going to be so mad, and rightfully so, I totally get it. trust me, I will take the L on this one. Tier list videos are so long to do. Why did I choose to do this? So we're going to be jumping into the Fallout franchise once again. And the next game is Fallout 3. And this was my first Fallout game. And I really enjoyed this game. I love it. I thought it was a fantastic game, but it's not quite as good as New Vegas for me personally. And for that reason, I'm putting it in pretty damn good. Although I do prefer the DLC for Fallout 3 over the DLC for New Vegas. I don't know why, that's just my opinion. I just really enjoyed those DLCs. But yeah, a lot of the same reasons as Fallout New Vegas. I thought it was a fantastic game. The open world was a little bit kind of dull. So yeah, pretty damn good. And the next one. Oh no! The next game is the controversial one. And that game is Fallout 76. And I can't help it. I've just got to say, I'm putting it in Masterpiece because it is the perfect example of how you can take a game franchise and absolutely goddamn ruin it. I'm putting it in meh, because I don't think it's a terrible game, performance-wise and for its bugs and some of the questionable things they do with that game. Yes, I definitely agree, but I tried the game and I just didn't really think it was that great. I played the game for about 10 hours, like when it came out on Xbox Game Pass, and I just didn't get into it. I thought it was really boring. I understand that it's a multiplayer-oriented game, though, and I wasn't playing it with anyone else. I was just playing it by myself, and I was bored out of my mind a lot of the time. I just didn't think it was anywhere near as fun as the other Fallout games, and for that reason, I'm putting it in meh, which is actually the first game in the meh category, so that's pretty interesting. The next game is a Game of the Year contender for the year it came out, definitely. And this game features a very prominent boy. And that was a terrible impression. That game, of course, is Doki Doki Literature Club. I already put that on there, I'm just kidding. That game is God of War, and I'm putting this in pretty damn good. I will admit, I know people are going to get mad about that, but I wasn't as much of a fan of the combat as I was as the story and the other elements of the game. And for that reason, I'm putting it in pretty damn good, but that doesn't mean that I'm trying to say it's a bad game. It's fantastic. It's definitely worth checking out, and I highly recommend it. It's just another one of those games that wasn't quite in that, it didn't quite pass the threshold of masterpiece for me. But hey, that's just me. Now the next one is a game where we're going to be jumping back into the Far Cry franchise, and that game is Far Cry Blood Dragon, and I'm putting it in Masterpiece. Because even though I do have the same issues with the controls for this game, I just thought that the comedy in this game, the story, and everything about this game was just fantastic, and I absolutely adore it. So I'm putting it in Masterpiece. Now the next one is, I'm just going to say it, we're jumping back into the Final Fantasy franchise. And the next one is Final Fantasy 15, and some people are probably going to massively disagree with me on this, but I'm putting it in pretty darn good. Because I recognise that it has a lot of story problems. It was a game that was too grandiose for its own good. Well, it was trying to be too grandiose, and it kind of failed with that. So I do completely understand why some people might dislike this game, but I still had a lot of fun with this game. The combat is, it might as well not exist most of the time. It's kind of sucks, I will admit that, but I still had a brilliant time with this game. I loved the characters, I loved the world, I adored the soundtrack, I just thought it was all really cool. And even though this is gonna get me cancelled somehow, I enjoyed it more than 7 Remake, I really did. I thought it was a hell of a lot less frustrating than 7 Remake, although I do think that 7 Remake has the stronger story. But Final Fantasy 15 just has a special place in my heart, I will admit that. Why did I decide to make this? Everyone is just gonna unsubscribe. And, So that was part 2 of this tier list. But what do you think? Let me know what your thoughts are on this tier list and where you might rank these games in the comment section down below. I will be making another part of this tier list compendium that I'm doing soon enough. But for those that might not be aware, the idea is that I'm going to be continuing this particular tier list, and I'm going to keep adding more games and adding more games. We're going to make the world's biggest tier list if we can. Should be pretty cool. If you liked what you saw here, then feel free to click the subscribe button and hit that like button and all the stuff that the content creators always freaking say. But thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Toodaloo!